Welcome. I'm Rogers Anderson, Williamson County's mayor, and today we have the opportunity to kind of really put our arms around a lot of the planning and the zoning and the things that are occurring in our county. Joe Horne's with us today, our Community Development Director. Been here a long time. Joe, before we get started today, let's kind of backtrack a little bit. And I know you've got a long career life here in the administrative complex building, but kind of take us back a little bit where you come from and how you wound up in your profession that you're in. And maybe somebody out there watching and saying, that sounds like a good profession to be in, and we don't need for you to comment on that. It just it is an occupation, and it has opportunities for us to get gray hairs in quite often.
Yeah, evidently. At any rate, I'm originally from Lawrence County. So I'm a longtime Middle Tennessee resident. I grew up in Lawrenceburg. Started driving through Franklin and Williamson County on a regular basis in the fall of '75 when I was attending Middle Tennessee State, and it was, I had the irony about it when I look back at some of that. I had the irony of when you'd make the bi-monthly trip back to your home to have your mother do your laundry, which seemed to happen a lot for me, driving 96 east between Murfreesboro and Franklin. And what we used to dread would be getting on that road, getting behind a farm implement so we could go 25 miles an hour, which to fast forward, that's highly ironic now because we do have farm implements on the road, but we don't have nearly as many. It was big-time farm company back then. But at any rate, I finished MTSU in '79. Took a job with Metro Planning Commission for about a year and a half, and discovered that I'd probably topped out in my career without a master's degree at the age of 23. So I ended up going to your alma mater, University of Tennessee, to graduate school, and took a 2-year program there. Moved back to this area, did some work on both the public and the private side, and came to work for the county in 1991 when they were looking for a planning director. And so I've been here ever since. Planning director from 1991 to early 2002, and then moved to development director, which is, or community development, I should say, which is kind of the umbrella for development services in Williamson County.
Well, and I know you have a lovely wife and a couple of boys, and this is home for you now. Chances of you moving back to your old homestead are probably slim to none, but we thank you for the work you do. And it's a very difficult job that you do, and I understand that, and I applaud you because you've got a very large staff, one of the, other than maybe Doug Good over in the Parks Department, one of the largest staffs to oversee and put your arms around. And as people are watching this, you have a direct impact on the unincorporated part of our county. Many times people do not realize that if you live in the city limits, such as Franklin or Brentwood, that you don't have the jurisdiction in there, but you work very closely with the different city staffs and the things that they're doing, certainly in the urban growth boundary areas. But if you look at where we are in 2013, and particularly if you go back and when I had darker hair and much younger, back in 1986, 7, and 8, we had some people come to town, and we set up a plan for how we wanted our county to be and to develop out into the future. Now that seems like yesterday, but it was several years ago, and just recently, here in the last year or so, we've finished that journey again, tweaked it, redefined some of the areas of our community. Population has probably at least 200 or 300% what it was back in the 1980 census. I don't know what the 80 census off the top of my head. At the 2010 census, about 183,000, and I was looking at some numbers the other day that were published out. We may have a little over 190,000 as this show is being taped. So our community continues to grow, which offers you a unbelievable challenge to balance all of that. Just before we went on the show this morning, we were talking about some things that occasionally pop up at the Planning Commission that you're not always never seen before. And it's not that it's good, it's not that it's bad, it's just in 2013, things are growing again, things are hitting on cylinders, and I'm kind of jumping around because I want to let you do some of the talking as we go through this year, 2013. None of us have a crystal ball that's absolutely 100% accurate, but it sure looks like we're back on an uptick in our new construction. We don't track existing sales of new homes as much as the real estate market does, but we keep a close eye on new home construction to the permitting process. And as you informed me the other day, looking at some reports, February 2013 was one of the best months we've had in several long years, pre-recession time. So kind of get your arms around that. I know that's a lot of material, but we're prepared for that next step. We'll tweak the plan, but we're seeing a lot of activity, Joe.
Well, we are. It's interesting. I'm not a big fan of pulling a couple of numbers, because months are arbitrary measurements anyway. And when we'd have a good month, it would in the past couple of years, there's a tendency to think, oh, happy days are here again. Kind of going, not exactly. There's all kinds of things that can happen. But historically, January and February are among our slowest months as far as permitting activity. And to have written 67 single-family permits in January and February really caught my attention. You have to go back to the early 2000s to even see anything approaching that. And we were trending upward as in 2012 in that area. So we have seen, and we've seen on our side, an increase in permits. We are probably on the cusp of seeing an increase in new projects. Now, one of the things that happened with the new projects have been there's a lot of dare I say, inventory out there. And it doesn't necessarily mean inventory on the ground. It's inventory that has been entitled in some manner, that has been to the Planning Commission, that has started their road. There's one subdivision that I'm not sure what its name is anymore. They tend to change them every once in a while, but there's one subdivision that platted 99 lots in 2008 literally 99 lots ready to go. Sewer system, water in place, roads in place. They have not pulled their first permit, but I cannot help believe they'll be starting to look toward doing that in the very near future. So that is probably one reason why we haven't seen a lot of that kind of activity at the Planning Commission, because it's almost like you have two tracks. You have what happens today and what's happening at the Planning Commission, which is sort of a harbinger to, you could say, what the market thinks is going to be happening 6, 9, 12 months down the road, because you have folks, in essence, putting their developments in line to start doing the things that ultimately show up on this monthly ledger sheet of here's the permits.
And I think it is important as you deal with this future growth. And we've had phenomenal growth over the last 10 years, certainly since 2000 to 2010, and we had a significant amount of growth from 1990 to 2000. That we're only, those numbers you're talking about, they're only in the unincorporated areas. We're not talking about the Franklin, the Brentwood, Spring Hill, Nolensville, Fairview, and Thompson Station. Those numbers aren't included in those 60-plus building permits.
Well, they're not right now, because as you know from the last census, we had to talk, we had some interesting conversations, because one thing that's happening too is, the unincorporated county, when you're doing planning services, development services in an unincorporated county, it has one fundamental difference than when you're doing the same thing in let's say, city of Franklin and city of Brentwood. Your jurisdiction shrinks as annexations come along. And I remember you and I had to have a very interesting conversation in 2010 after the census was announced, and we were going over the population in each of the jurisdictions, you know, Franklin, Brentwood, and the unincorporated county. And it sort of struck us both as kind of ironic that there was less than 100 more people in the unincorporated county from 2000 to 2010. And we were trying to figure out how could we do that when we'd written something in a range of 3,000 building permits in that same time frame. And what literally had happened was there was quite a few annexations. Things like that were like a forest crossing, for instance, that was in the unincorporated county in 2000, in 2010 is in Franklin. And that's neither good nor bad. It just, you know, the permits give you an insight of actually what's happening, but when you look at with a municipality, you always have to be careful to say how much of that is driven by new people moving into new developments and new houses, and people you just sort of moved a line around and suddenly, I guess you've captured it. It's kind of like risk, I guess.
Well, but on the other hand, and I know that there has been those areas that you're very familiar with annexation. When you go to 40,000 feet and you look down, you and your department and the citizens, through the input, they have an opportunity and have preserved the unincorporated area that we may be the fastest growing county in the state, but our unincorporated area, we work hard at keeping and saving and preserving those areas out there. Now, granted, some of that does come along through that process, as you call annexation, that cities do have the right to do. But very little annexation occurred from about, what, 2006 or 7, somewhere very mid 2000. If it occurred, I guess it occurred in those first 3 to 4 year window.
That is correct.
But it's still to me, that's a great thing to have, that your county is pretty stable, even though you are peeling off some, which means the people are there are staying there. Now there's a little growth, but it's a wonderful testimony to you and the city folks that we are having growth, but it's inside those areas that the growth should be controlled, and that's through the city roads and the infrastructure, whereas the county, rather than going out in the middle of a field and plopping down a new subdivision, and we have no infrastructure basically to get out there to them, it's so much better to force that growth inside those areas.
No, I'm not, you know, well, I'm not sure if I'd use the word force. This is as close as we're ever going to come to contradicting you on camera. We encourage it.
I understand.
But I think the point is, what happened? What has happened in this county, and to a certain extent, and this is my cliche, I guess, of the day, is sometimes I feel like I'm standing sometimes on the shoulder of giants, in the sense that this county made some very hard, fundamental decisions in 1988 with the adoption of the first plan. Well, we had plans before, but the first comprehensive plan, because we really started looking at this county as, you know, it was, you know, change was inevitable. Growth was clearly here. In that context, you know, you can go through all the building blocks of it. You had a regional mall attempting to come out of the ground. You had the announcement of the Saturn plant, which is still with us, somewhat different form. And, you know, then other things that were going on too that were kind of fueling a bit of the speculation, which, you know, we had the American Airlines hub, and that was a huge deal at the time. Now that's, you know, that's sort of gone its separate way. But one thing that happened in that time frame with the county is this, you know, if you go back and look at the commuter numbers, you know, this county was I used to say a modified bedroom community at the time. It tended to track toward Nashville. You came to Williamson for the schools, you came to Williamson for the small town feel and the like, but you largely, you know, got in your car and drove to Nashville. With the spin-offs that came with the mall in 1990 and all those pretty buildings out there now, we have our own economy here, and that works, you know, clearly on an economic development standpoint and alike. So that's one thing that has changed. Everybody's not making that trip to the big city for their jobs. Having said that, because we have jobs now. People are making the big trip to the semi-big city in the Cool Springs area to pick up jobs. So that is one dynamic that is about the county that is a little bit harder to measure, but is clearly there. But back to the plan itself. You know, they were blunt tools, but you know, the institution of, particularly in the west side of the county and maybe the southeast side of the county, where we started talking about densities being 1 unit to 5 acres. That took a lot to do it. And you know, but it was not like we were saying it is going to be 1 to 5 acres forever. It was, at the time, it was saying, look, from a road standpoint, from a water standpoint, and to some extent to a topographical standpoint, jumping out there with small developments didn't make a lot of sense, because with those developments, there are obligations. You have to provide emergency services. You have to provide firemen. You have to provide sheriffs. So it's not just perhaps as simple as
building a subdivision.
Building a subdivision, because you know that, you know, and so by doing that, I think it gave us a fighting chance. You could also argue it speaks to schools as well, although we seem to build them, but we're building them where there is some pretty impressive growth.
Well, and part of the show today was to kind of go back 20, 25 years and bring us forward, and clearly through your fingerprints and your staff, and there have been many folks that have contributed to the success of Williamson County. You have named a bunch: the business model, the schools. I still say people move into an area for good schools, they have to have a job.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they can drive back and forth to Nashville or Murfreesboro much easier now than it was 20, 25 years
Mm-hmm.
ago. But at the end of the day, there's no one single pin that you can just drop into the middle of the pile and say, this is what did it.
Mm-hmm.
It was really a lot of efforts by a lot of different people, but clearly when you talk about developing what can go into your unincorporated area of your community, you've had a very large piece of that pie to try to balance, and balance on some days goes this way, as opposed to just what we would traditionally like to think of. And I know you can't predict the future, but we just recently finished up a retooling, a redesign, a reformulating. We didn't throw the other plan away, we just improved on the things that we needed to. We did go out into the community, and we did go out and listen to them. And were we able to satisfy all of the concerns? Not all, but as we go through the next 20 years or 25 years, and you may still be here, but I don't think I'll be here in 20 more years, Joe. And I suspect that in 10 years, I know you're wanting to say something, just let it go.
No, I shall.
Things are moving so fast. You and I both have read numbers that this county, in the year 2035, is predicted to have something on the neighborhood of 375,000 people, population-wise. That's almost a doubling of what we've got. You know, our county was incorporated in 1799, and it took us to 2010 to get 183,000 people, and we're going to double in 25 years. That what took us over 200 years, and that's just math. That's just people. But in order to protect the next generation and the next generation, your children and our grandchildren, it's a real chore to try to figure out all of these combinations that work. But I think over the next 3 to 5 years, we are very well poised for the kind of growth that institutionally says these are the things we can handle.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting. It's you know, it's I don't know if I can explain this very well without sounding like I've perhaps been deluding myself. But one thing about, you know, the growth numbers are sort of what they are. It's very easy to sort of look out and look forward to the future as to, on a fixed basis on what is going to happen in Williamson County. That, that 350,000 number, or you gave is probably as accurate as any I've heard. The question is, where exactly will those people live? Obviously, we've got 6 municipalities, and many of them will choose to live there. These municipalities will change in form. One thing the 1988 plan, I won't say predicted it, probably intuited it. I mean, that's my word of the day. Was that we'd have a unincorporated county be West and East Williamson, because the 65 Columbia Pike corridor, and maybe now you could say Lewisburg Pike, is kind of the spine that everything's growing out from. And the real question is how to do the small things correct, how to balance legitimate legitimate property rights that people have with the idea with that we also want to we also want this community to look a lot like what drew me here eventually in the beginning. In the beginning it was a job, of course, but then I came to love the county as well.
Well, and again, if you go up and you look at the things that have been done to help protect the Leapers Forks and the College Grove, it's not to say that those areas don't need some additional help, but the Patesville, the Fernvale community, in between the Fairviews, and our whole demographic area is really being challenged by people that literally, just like you and I, we're both transplants. We were not born and raised there. People come into our community for various reasons. It might be tourism. Excuse me. It might be just driving through and fall in love with this area. It's interesting. We have a lot of people moving into the Cool Springs Business District, but likewise we have a lot of interest that's outside in the areas that you have to deal with every single day. And we need to protect those. But at the same time, we need to have the growth. We need to have the economic development in our community to keep people here and challenge your children and my children to come back and want to work here.
Absolutely, and you mentioned some of the communities. As a planner, you're always kind of balancing what is going to happen organically. With not on one hand giving some guidance, trying to maintain the community in something resembling its current form, but also not getting in the way too much, because you can get in the way and you can't upset that balance. Obviously, if you went to if you decided that let's pick on Community X, because I really don't want to hear from Community X today saying what you're talking about, saying you got a nice small town feel. But we think the ability to build high-rises out there, 3-story buildings with apartments would be a good move. That's probably not what the community wants. What you have to do is you have to sort of balance expectations and a certain amount of reality, because in the end, a lot of the infrastructure that supports systems like that is quite expensive. And when you're going back sometimes to retrofit communities with that kind of infrastructure, it's not only is a little bit more expensive and typically a little bit more controversial.
Well, and so many of the things that you do drive the extra cost that we have to look at in that infrastructure base. The very basic one is certainly public safety and fire. If you build a home out on X road that's out into the community, you want to be able to respond to that in the event of a fire. And as you know, Joe, all of the unincorporated area, other than some interlocal agreements, is serviced by our volunteers, our men and women in those communities that take that risk upon themselves to help put out the brush fires and the house fires, and oh, by the way, the emergency calls. Now, we do have a countywide ambulance through the efforts of the Williamson Medical Center and through the contributions that are made out of the county side to keep that up and growing. But that again, we've got to have good roads. We've got a good highway department. I mean, it's a domino effect, but it all really focuses in so many of those things. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? I'm not sure, but I know once that momentum, once that snowball starts coming off that hill, you've got to provide those services.
Or at least not step in front of it.
Or at least not stepping in front. Joe, we've got about 2 or 3 minutes left, and I've kind of covered some of the things that I thought we needed to talk about and get it out to the public. What have I overlooked from your side that might be something that, first of all, if people have questions, we have a website, if you would, yes. Phone numbers, and the different departments that you have and oversight in, so that we can let people know we are here to help them, contrary to sometimes that may not always come through, not necessarily from our side, but a lot of people are stressed and they're trying to get their home plans built and they need this and need that. But we do try to work hard to get that information out to them.
Well, yes. You know, it's a, you know, as I said earlier, we're an umbrella to planning and zoning, of course, building codes, codes compliance, engineering, and the sewage disposal folks, which deals with the septic tank issues. And so, you know, I would say it this way: it's a good setup, you know. But we were also hoping, trying to keep our customer service in line and trying to identify that, because you know one of the weird, odd little tensions, and I've had a couple of planning commissioners point this out to me. There's a tough tension when people come in, because we have some very affluent folks that can bring in the right kind of consultants that can work through these, at times, very complex regulations. And then we have what I have referred to, at least internally, as do-it-yourselfers, folks that are on somewhat more modest means, and
Sure.
You have to figure out ways to help
Sure.
them. And it's pretty key to be able to spot that, because frankly, we are here perhaps at the pleasure of the public, and we need to keep that in mind. And some folks are not going to come to the table blessed with the same expertise, knowledge, or resources than others. And it's one of the key things we have to do when applications come up, when problems come up, is try to assess that and try to, you know, I don't want to sound too paternalistic, obviously, but sometimes we have to be cognizant of that. And you know, and the communication is clearly the key on our part and our customers' part.
Well, we ran out of time, Joe. Thank you very much for your hard work. Joe Horne, Community Development Director. Got an awesome job, and we appreciate the hard work you do, and to all your staff.
Thank you.
I'm Rogers Anderson. We'll see you around with another event and another issue at the next time. Have a good day.
When sharing the road, reaction time is important. Motorists should reduce their speed and avoid tailgating, especially in bad weather. Cyclists have the same rights and responsibilities as motorists. They should travel in the same direction on the right hand of the road and obey all traffic signals. Observing these rules provides predictability for both motorists and cyclists. Remember, same roads, same rules, same rights.